This episode is brought to you by RLD Group, on a mission to reboot leadership drive, eradicate burnout in tech, and help transform technical experts lacking people leadership skills from being a company's biggest liability into their greatest asset. Leaders in tech are burning out at an absurd rate. Ctrl Alt Delete with Lisa Duerre is a no BS conversation with a female executive who spent over 25 years in Silicon Valley. If you're suffering from the always on, never good enough, we'll replace you today machine called the tech space. This show will help you reboot your leadership drive. Here's Lisa.
Hey there, Lisa Duerre, Ctrl Alt Delete, coming to you today with a question. And I love questions because curiosity, that worlds create worlds, and curiosity opens us up to possibility. And what I know right now is leaders and companies are freaking out about turnover. People are dropping, and I'm putting air quotes for anyone listening now, about like flies. People are feeling really stuck and unsure. That those that are quitting are questioning, should I be doing it? And so I'm thinking about the leader right now who is really just overwhelmed and thinking, how in the heck am I going to get through this? How can I keep steering the ship where I need it to go with all this uncertainty and change going on? If that's you or someone you love, someone you lead, this episode is for you. Like, this is what we're going to be talking about today through the lens of influence and communication and storytelling. We're going to equip you today to really help you understand how you might stand tall in what you know to be true, and also curious about what's possible at the same time. And our guest today, Lisa Beth Lentini Walker, is somebody who I truly admire, who I've read her book more than once. And I invited her here today to bring her expertise forward because, man, has she been in the trenches and she knows what this takes. So Lisa Beth, I'm so glad you're here on Ctrl Alt Delete with Lisa Duerre.
I am thrilled to be here. I am a big fan of yours as well. So I'm excited for us to have this conversation because I think there are voices that have not been heard that continue to need to be heard by people. So this is a perfect time to talk about honoring people's voices and hearing and truly listening, especially when you ask for feedback or ask people to speak up.
Right. Oh my gosh. So I'm just going to start here and say, first of all, everyone knows when I read a book and I love it, there's lots of tags, right? So the book, Raise Your Game, Not Your Voice. Raise your game, not your voice. How many of you are guilty of raising your voice and not your game? Here comes my hand, right? I've done that. I've raised my voice and not my game. The beautiful thing about this book is it's a playbook with lots of worksheets and insights into how people think and how to move people toward solution, getting people on board. And I love this so much because your focus is compliance, right? It's ethics and compliance. And the reason I invited you here is because this is, listen, compliance or agreement and change management. To me, it's not just about the legal team or the social responsibility team. It's about any leader who has to get a team aligned and moving toward the same goal. Whether you need the customer to say yes, and you're trying to figure out what their needs are, whether you're trying to plan your family vacation, or who's going to work from home today because the kid's sick, anything in between, like everything in here applies. I mean, Lisa, this is just an amazing gift to the world.
Thank you. Yeah, when we wrote this book, we really wanted to make it actionable because there's so many books that are just theoretical and they don't tell you, so what, right? Now you know that there's a problem.
Exactly.
So what do you do?
Mm-hmm.
And as we looked at it, one of the things that becomes really important, especially outside of highly regulated industries, is being able to influence, at times of constrained resources, being able to influence when you're in the middle of a crisis, being able to influence in places where you don't have apparent authority. And so we really felt like this was something that was needed because we started out from a compliance standpoint because compliance is relatively new, all things considered.
Mm-hmm.
The last 20 so years it's been around, and it really started out as a place where dreams go to die and you get the answer of no. And I wanted to flip the script on that because really we're all in this together. So when we talk about this, yes, it started from a compliance vantage point, but it 100% is applicable to everything because we are all, as human beings, part of groups. It could be your faith group, it could be your choir group, but you need to be able to communicate with so many different people and places and audiences and in different contexts. But these skills are applicable to everywhere you go in the world. As long as there's one other person, you have a group and there's an opportunity for communication.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I think I just want to, if I could presence a thought here on this, one of the things when I was thinking about our audience, there's so much change going on. You know, there was a time before the COVID hit and the racial injustice really became, you know, the George Floyd movement that really spurred so much change. The world was described by social anthropologists as VUCA, volatile, uncertain, chaotic, ambiguous, I think. I'm trying to remember the A. I think it's ambiguous. And we've been living in a VUCA world and leading in a VUCA world and thinking that that's the way, that's what needs to happen. And now with COVID and George Floyd and so much more. I mean, even what's going on with Russia, Ukraine, like there's just, it is nonstop, right? The supply chain issues, the great resignation. I mean, I'm not trying to be a doom and gloom here, but I'm trying to paint a picture, right? Like all of that is happening. And so now the social anthropologists are labeling this experience that we're all having as Bonnie, which is brittle, anxious, nonlinear, and incomprehensible. Yeah, how's that for lightening the mood today, right?
I feel ready to conquer the world. I don't know about you.
Yeah, and but I'm saying it to really highlight that I think it's time for leaders to take a pause and realize that, you know, I like to say VUCA is vamos, right? Where we are now requires a different type of leadership. And the reason I love your book so much is I think that it's a great resource to help peoples who really, in my opinion, the antidote to Bonnie in my mind is firm. It's flexible, intuitive, resilient, and mindful. And your book is such a tie to that. And what we do with our clients, I just thought we got to have this conversation. So when I think about these leaders and they're like, VUCA's vamos, what the hell, Lisa? I don't even know what you're talking about. What's this Bonnie thing? What I'm really trying to highlight and ask people to take a moment to just breathe and think about what used to work back then. Your opportunity now is to take the best of what was, the best of what is, and then look at how might we take the best of the future. How could that lead us to a thriving future? And this is why I'm so excited to talk to you today, because you lay out ways to do voice of customers, to do stakeholder interviews, to look at who might be the roadblockers, who might actually be on site, really cheerleading us on and have no power. Like you break down influence and communication through the lens with you and your co-author, Steph, through, it's just such a beautiful gift. So rather than just keep talking about how awesome it is, like, let's get into some examples and let me land for us here. For the audience, I want them to really know, and I want you to answer this question too. I know you are amazing because we've had these conversations, but I'm going to give your formal background here to really land that. And what I'd love to invite you to do is really talk about what you get paid to do, because that's different than how I describe you, right? But let me describe you and give you the formal intro. So Lisa Beth Lentini Walker is the CEO of Lumen Worldwide Endeavors, a firm specializing in compliance, governance, and ethics consulting. She is an adjunct professor of law in the US and the EU, and she co-authored the book, Raise Your Game, Not Your Voice, How Listening, Communicating, and Storytelling Shape Compliance Program Influence. And I've held it up, so I'm going to hold that up again. But I bet, Lisa Beth, that inside your heart, you have like a soul's calling or something that I know that ties all this together through your experience. So can you just share with the listener, you know, what brought you here and why the book now? And why does it matter so much? Because I know it does, but let's hear it through your lens.
Yeah. So thanks for that great introduction. I have always been a person who deeply cares about other people. I think part of my life journey is really to make the world a better place for my children and the children of my children. And that manifests in multiple forms, right? Part of the passion that I have for my work is that when I help good people make better decisions by having really informed risk information, right? We can make choices to do better because we know better. So I combine everything that I have learned to this point to help people make good decisions about running their business, about how to handle navigating regulations, about how to build stronger, better teams. It's all about helping to make the world that we want it to be, right? Doesn't mean that there aren't things that we don't like, right? We know that there are people out there who just aren't good people. Fortunately, it's a small percentage of the population. Most of the world is filled with amazingly good people, especially if you put them in a system that helps people make good decisions, right?
I love
So
that.
it's all about being a person who helps make the world a slightly better place than what I found it.
Isn't that when I think of anyone listening in right now, I mean, that's a question to ask yourself, like your true why. What's your why? Why do you do it? Right. So we all have our job titles and, our calling cards with our resumes, but your why is super inspiring to me. And I think it's probably why energetically we connected so quickly when we first talked. I actually met Lisa Beth we did a fireside chat for our client base. One of our special guests said, "You need to meet Lisa Beth." And I was like, okay. And, it was like, because you left me better than when we talked before. Like there's something about the energy that you bring into these situations, right? And your vast experience. So I think one of the questions that's really on my heart when I know what's going on in the world today, and I know that the world of tech is really back-to-back execution focused, get the chip out, fix the code, get the next customer deal. It's very outwardly focused on getting things done. And I know that the work we do inside ourselves is what can really help us be our best self. And I think because you have a playbook here, what's your favorite chapter that you might recommend? I mean, I'm going to ask you some questions, but knowing what you know about this audience, what's something that you're like, oh my gosh, make sure you check out this page or this chapter? What's one of your favorite things?
Oh, that is kind of like asking which kid is your favorite.
Yeah, which kid's your favorite? Yeah, come on. I won't tell anybody. Which kid is your favorite?
In terms of chapters, I think that probably the first one is my favorite, which is about being an organizational scholar. Being right alone is never enough. You need to be able to provide context. You need to remember that you are a business person in everything that you do. And sometimes we forget that everything that we do, whether it's creating a policy or, finding a solution, is about a greater why. We can't lose sight of that because otherwise we become transactional widgets, and that is not fulfilling. That is not something that people aspire to. Being connected to deeper whys is really what allows you to move forward with passion and purpose. And so I like to start there because I think this is helpful information for anyone, whether you're working in a call center or you're leading a corporation. Always connecting with your why and understanding you've got your why and you've got the business that you work with and their mission, vision, purpose, which hopefully if you choose well you connect with. But when you think about that and the organization and how the organization puts good into the world, you need to realize that being a scholar is not a task. It is a practice, and it's iterative because the constellation of groups that we belong to and the organizations that we choose to dedicate our life work to, they all have personalities like human beings. They're evolving and growing. They're actual organisms that have their own life story, etc. So honor that and realize that you're part of this bigger story when you're connected with other people.
I'm going to read what you wrote about being a scholar, because I think it's going to land this. And one of the things I really want to invite the listener here today to think about is, I think in tech, there's a lot of times this label of scholar. The reason I'm going to read it is I want to expand the view. Scholar typically means technical expert. I know the most I need to know in my field, probably the same in law, right? Everybody has their, like, I have my technical strength, right? What you're looking at, and the way I've read it in here, is that a scholar is more than the technical. That's a piece of it, but it's the entire system, right? And looking for silos and breaking down where there might be barriers for results. So you wrote, a scholar is a trusted and accomplished expert, a creator of knowledge who can integrate disparate data and concepts to innovate and reach new conclusions. You are entering the knowledge business, and the production and evaluation of knowledge are essential to your success. And I really feel like that ties back to Bonnie when I was talking about that. I mean, this is why I was like, oh my gosh. So when you think about becoming a scholar, and I know you outline it here, and by the way, you have examples in here all the time. Like, I'll show this one. And we even talk about Star Wars and Yoda. I mean, you can tell I've been in here, right? So one of the things that I loved was the Yoda quote, right? A true Yoda, in your mind, a scholar, right? Of an organization challenges convention, helps others to see patterns, acts as a role model, and enabler of success, and reflects on an ever-evolving landscape. So we didn't plan this. This is just organic as we're talking right now. I think we need Yodas right now to run our businesses.
We need Yodas for so many reasons.
Right?
When you think about the Yoda character, I think it fits really well. It's someone who has deep subject matter expertise, which is important. You have to know your stuff.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, there's no need to be bragging about it. There's no need to shove that knowledge in anyone's face. It's really important when you're a Yoda that you are helping to combine the best of all of the people around you to come up with infinitely better outcomes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Yoda helps to facilitate great new talent, great new thinkers, and helps to guide people who are perhaps new to whatever, or people who have been practicing in that area and just haven't had that sounding board, mentor, connector, another person to help expand the thinking, right?
Yeah.
And Yoda recognizes that. So it's not, I always like to say it's never enough to just be right. It's how you do, not just what you do.
Mm. Yeah, I want you to say that again. It's never enough to just be right. Did I get that?
That's right.
It's not. Give me the second part, the subtext.
It's never enough to just be right, right? Being right alone is not enough. If no one's listening, if you're not able to get people to buy into your rightness, it's like a tree falling in the forest if no one's there to hear it. Does it make a sound? Well, no one cares because no one's there. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you need to understand that it's great to have the right answer. It's always good to be technically right, but being technically right is not the path forward in the future. You need to be able to bring people along on the journey to help to create and collaborate together, right? I think that, particularly as we see artificial intelligence continuing to grow and finding different ways of using things like that, our humanness and our ability to connect, influence, motivate are all key skills that have historically been underestimated that we need to have for the future.
One of my guests, we were talking about introversion one day, and she's like, the soft skills are the hard skills. And I was like, this is right. Like, what I know to be true is that leaders who just have technical expertise are actually liabilities to organization. And I know that even just through the compliance lens, but my background being in HR, right, and getting the employee relations complaints and doing the investigations and better understanding, there's so many well-intended and nice but clueless technical experts who haven't been given the opportunity the development, the mentorship, the sponsorship, allyship. I mean, we can ship everything to really help them see like what you're talking about and what a Yoda is, right? And what it means to be a scholar. Like, I love this scholar concept so much, because I think that the world that we're in now, the human connection is at the heart of tech, and that connection is what's leading, the lack of connection is what's leading to the burnout. I mean, 38 million people left the workforce in 2021. And the number one reason listed was burnout or being unsupported. Like, people blame it on money. They're burnt out. They don't feel connected. This hybrid world's throwing them off. And then something very near and dear to my heart, the other day I read that over 90% of HR professionals are burnt out right now. And that makes me want to throw up, jump up and down, and like from the rooftops. And I think HR as a profession is a compliance profession in one lane, right? They have to make sure you fill out the performance reviews, or get the stock allocations done, or get the benefits open enrollment. You know, there's a lot of things that are time sensitive and have to get done. And I think about even in the non-HR space of just our finance colleagues, heck, our IT teams trying to make sure you don't click the wrong link and get hacked, right? This is all like people-driven compliance that we have to figure out how to help our organization and systems make it not only easy, but tie back to the, I think, intrinsic motivations that you're talking about too. So I'm curious, with all that data and like my soapbox here, you have such experience here in different organizations and working with your clients. Is there a story that might illustrate or highlight what a leader can do right now to align their teams to connect at a human level, and also through the lens of compliance to get people to take action? Like, I know you have so many of these. So what's your favorite, I don't know, highlight
Yeah.
leader?
Well, I will tell you, I have done loads and loads and loads and loads of internal investigations.
I can only imagine, right? Yeah.
And I
We
am
have
like,
cocktails
right.
under NDA. Yeah, exactly.
I have seen things I cannot unsee at this point. One of the things that I think it's important to remember is that the biggest challenge to relationships is unmet expectations.
I want to lean into that.
Yeah, right. This is what destroys marriages. This is what destroys relationships between coworkers, bosses, etc. It's what erodes trust. And half of the time, we're thinking things and not saying them because of a whole host of reasons. Most of the time, I can go through an investigation and tell whether there's a communication problem in like a couple of seconds. And that is, frankly, about 75% of investigations are because of poor communication.
How do you know, when you say I can tell right away, what are the telltale signs that the communication is at the root of the issue?
There usually is a complaint, someone's not listening. There's usually some type of something, this person hates me. Half of that is, people making decisions based off of cues and not validating or, acid testing those assumptions that they are building in their mind. And I think it becomes even more challenging when you have remote and hybrid, because we are missing so many cues, right? Like you can see me from, about mid armpit up, right? And so you're missing all of the cues where I'm leaning in, and really I'd rather be looking at your eyes than at this, computer screen, because though, I do think the eyes are a window into the soul, and that you can tell so much more by being in person with someone and going out for a coffee or whatever, right? We are missing some of those main cues. And so communication has become so much more challenging. And to get it right and to connect and to be able to help make sure that there's alignment of expectations so that you don't have disappointments unintentionally is so much more important today than ever before. And you can't just expect it's going to happen. This stuff is not by osmosis.
I think it requires intentionality on levels leaders aren't even really tuned into.
Yes.
And I say that with my heart cracked wide open, because I'm not perfect at this. And what I've learned in facilitating and coaching through Zoom, man, it's about the questions. It's about how you set it up. I think even in your book, you talk about different learning styles.
100%.
Right. And really recognizing you have to build new muscles and skills here, and perhaps figure out who else on your team can do that with you. Because it sometimes listening isn't a one-person job. Do you know?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
And I know you were talking about expectations. Oh my gosh. Like I just had a flood of information that just popped into my head when you were saying that. So one of the things that I'm noticing with hybrid and leaders right now is, let's just get back to the office. Right. And what I'm reading and hearing in our clients is the women of color and women in general are like, beep, beep. I like having the 2 hours back so I can get a load of laundry done and be present for dinner. I don't want to have to do my hair and my makeup. I was more comfortable and more productive. And yet there's this real need or belief, which I think goes back to pre-COVID, that you have to be together. And I just want to presence that and highlight your conversation about expectations and investigations that you're doing, because the not presencing or being curious and even restating those expectations or getting input of the best of what was and what is, so we can create our future. I feel like that would lead right to a bunch of investigations in my own world, in my own thoughts, like, oh yeah, so-and-so says I need to be in the office every day. Well, that's discrimination because I have this medical condition I've never disclosed. And you're like, boom, right? There it is.
Absolutely. And,
Yeah.
our brains have been under stress for so long, right? When you think about how the human brain works, it is this great connector because we all have this gray matter between our ears, every single one of us. And one of the things that we know about the brain is that extended periods of stress can create some permanent changes. And we know that when people feel like there are constrained resources, we go back to the very basic, fight, flight, freeze. We go back to, let's make sure we've got shelter, food, water, right? And a lot of us are going through that in various different ways. And managers and people leaders and colleagues and teammates, whoever you are, there has to be a lot more grace in terms of your interactions with others right now, because we don't know what people are going through. And what may have worked from a life rhythm, whether it did or not, we're not going to debate whether people's lives were working pre-COVID, but we are finding a new rhythm to life, and everybody's struggling with, where does this all land? We know we're capable of doing some things. Is this optimal, suboptimal? Is there a nice way to find a happy medium? Does it depend on who you are, where you are, what kind of organization you run? And certainly people in the HR and information security and compliance space, can we do our jobs remotely? 100%, we're capable. Is that the best use of everybody's time and energy and resources? I think the answer is it depends.
Yeah.
There's value to both. And we are not very good as human beings at getting to both and.
I know, right? I think one of the things that you're saying right here that if I give everybody something tangible and practical right now, it's increase your use of the word and. I mean, it could be that simple. Like, the answer today is this, and it could change tomorrow. Or I'm feeling this way right now, and once I drink some water and get a meal, it could be different. Like the simplest things, even with yourself, practice with yourself. I've been thinking a lot about, honestly, cybersecurity. We have a lot of clients in cybersecurity, and we talk a lot about what I call it the amygdala hijack, because that's a phrase I learned.
Yep.
Right. That when you go offline, your executive functioning stops because you're in fight, flight, or freeze, fawn, or whatever F you want to throw in there. The blood flow, it's all about safety, right? And if you don't feel safe, there's no way you're going to have trust. Right. And so I feel like an imperative for every leader is to figure out how to get your amygdala back online and get yourself back up to executive functioning. And I know that that comes with breathing, tending and befriending, talking to a friend, sometimes rising to the challenge, like in the Olympics. But it always has to start with self-awareness first. And in this high execution focused space and back-to-back meetings, I think one of the practical things people can do is do a body scan or make their meetings 10 minutes less to actually assess how they're feeling or what their thoughts are. That's my experience and what I'm seeing. But do you have any tips for that on just how might we help leaders assess and just become aware that when you're back here, if you're thinking you're going to get eaten by a tiger, it's really hard to see an and or be flexible.
100%.
How do you feel, like, what are your tips for your clients on how to go from that to back up here where you have innovation and creativity and you can see possibility?
Right. I love that you're talking about amygdala hijack. It's one of my favorite topics as well, because we know that higher level brain function does not happen until the amygdala is satisfied. Right. And I heard
satisfied.
Yes.
I love the amygdala is satisfied, right?
There's a great
I love that.
Yeah. There was a great professor out of, I think it was George Washington University, who explained what brain function was at the level of a child. And I always use that with my teams. Because I have children and they can understand that, and B, because let's keep it simple. And the way that they explained it was that the lower brain functions, the amygdala, et cetera, are in the lower part of your house, right? The upper functions are in the upstairs. You can't turn the lights on upstairs if you can't get in through the front door. Right. And they also talked about the hooting owl, which is your wise brain, and the barking dog, which is your amygdala. The amygdala is the barking dog, right? Like alert, alert, alert.
Total alert. Absolutely.
You can't get the wise owl to come in, which is this higher level brain function that allows you to do problem solving and see on your periphery and everything else, until the dog stops barking. So
beautiful.
We need to stop the barking dogs. How do we do that? One of the ways that I do it with meetings is before we begin the actual work portion of the meeting, I actually take a minute or two and I'm like, tell me one thing that you're happy about today, or tell me one thing that you're excited about for the future. And then I have everybody take a breath and say, please leave the last meeting that you had behind and let's focus in on this. Because that allows there to be connection, sharing, belonging, bonding, and a breath to make a clean break, because everybody's carrying some baggage. You have to find a place for people to put down their bags for just a moment so that they can be present in your meeting.
Yep, I agree. I agree with you. And I love your example of the barking dog and the wise owl so much. And, one of the things we do with our clients, I'm going to do an and. I've been working with our clients about shaking the energy off, like getting the energy out. And we just sometimes will do this. And I got to go first because people are like, what is she doing? Right. But I know when I do this with my hands, I'm shaking them. If you're listening and not watching, I just shake my hands back and forth. And then even if I just do one breath, not even three, because sometimes three feels like everyone's staring at me for too long. That's my truth. Right. But just even one. And one of the things I found useful too is celebrating. So we'll start every client engagement, every coaching engagement with, what are we celebrating? Like, let's look for the good first, so we can resource ourselves to then step into what we need to know, which is the harder stuff. So I love so much, like, one thing that makes you feel good, one thing that makes you happy, one thing we're celebrating. I also really think that you modeling that is such a gift to everyone around you, because I think it takes courage to do this. Right. In the working world, it's like, get down to business and get it done. And, we're talking about you're barking dogs up. Let's calm the dog down. Let's get your amygdala back, regulated. And people are just like, what kind of woo-woo weirdo stuff is this, right? But it's becoming more mainstream. And I appreciate that you bring this, because I know you had shared with me your background in wellness and how you went and got certified in this. And so I believe we're at a point where leaders can give themselves permission to be curious about that and notice their barking dog and figure out what works for them. And then just bring that into the meeting and let other people, what works for you? What a cool conversation when you're feeling hijacked or your resources are your demands are exceeding your internal resources and you just can't get it done. How do you get back online? How do you reboot? Hence Ctrl Alt Delete.
Right.
I love this conversation.
And I think as leaders, like, let's be honest, let's be humble, let's be real. Our humanness is what makes us great. Don't lose it for the sake of looking like the right leader.
Yeah, whoever that is anyway.
Right.
Right. Yeah. I want to ask you a question if I can about this.
Yes.
So can you see a parallel? It's like a loaded question. I think I know your answer. I'm going to ask it anyway for the sake of awareness and expanding our horizons. So we're talking about this in the context of work. I know this to be true in my own family. I know this to be true in my friendships. I know this to be true in my community. Even when I'm navigating some stuff with my daughter's school, right? When my amygdala is hijacked, I don't show up as my best parent partner.
Nope.
Right. And then when someone else is hijacked and then that triggers me, and then we're now in this hijack party, right? My personal example, last night, my daughter has a gecko and the gecko gets fed crickets. And we made a deal. If you want this gecko, you feed with the crickets. Like, I'm not a cricket fan. This is your deal. My husband too, right? Well, a couple of crickets snuck out last night and I hear this blood curdling scream, which triggered the heck out of me. And I want to be there for her. But that blood curdling scream, I just wanted to stop. And now that I know all this, I was like, oh, barking dog, her barking dog, all the dogs are barking. And I was really actually super proud of myself to be able to stay fully present with her and actually say out loud, I'm feeling triggered too. And I want you to feel safe. And I started talking softer and like really trying to reassure, but also not be like, what's your problem? It's a freaking cricket, right? That's not going to help. And I think even as leaders, sometimes, somebody's complaining, it's too loud in here, or this, I don't want to go to this all hands meeting because I don't want to be in public because people aren't wearing masks or whatever. And then we judge like their own barking dog.
Yes.
So I just want to presence this on a much broader scale so we can all see where this could go. What tips, suggestion, what works for you personally when your own barking dog's going too and you're still trying to lead others and their dogs are barking?
Boy, this is a good one. And honestly, it's taken years for me to have an answer that I think actually works. We have gotten to a point in society where we are so polarized and so focused on being right all the time and judging. And that, it's not helped by Instagram and all the other things that exist in the world that allow you to compare yourself all the time. One of the things that I think is really important is validating others' experiences and acknowledging your own, because many things can be true at the same time.
I love this. Right? I'm saying yes and amen. If I had an amen bell right now, I would say that. That's an amen.
Yes.
Right? Because when I'm there, I'm thinking, you touch bugs and slugs and you catch flies and release them. What's with the crickets? But at the same time, I knew enough to go, this experience for her is her experience and it's not mine to judge. And I said, I feel like when we talk in this in home, I think my Emily, my amygdala is getting triggered. And I got to figure out how to get myself centered so I can really be here with you too. And I'm confused because I know how much you love bugs, but this is confusing to me. And then she's like, Mama, it could crawl in my clothes and make more bugs and it could be in my shoe. Flies don't do that. Slugs don't. I was like, oh my gosh, that totally makes sense. I get you now. Right. So it was a real, very challenging time, but I can see that at work too. Right. Why are you so pissed off that the code's buggy? You're going to get buggy code. Go fix it. What's your problem? Yeah, but I don't want it. I could see how much this can apply. So I love you're giving us this perspective on it can be more And your truth can be yours and mine can be mine. And we can meet together and just presence what's going on.
It's so important from a trust perspective that people feel seen and understood. You do not have to agree. You can continue to disagree if you need to, but you need to validate the experience. And it's a fine line at times to be able to hold these things as true, maintain potentially a different opinion, but make the person that you're interacting with feel honored, seen, understood. That's true leadership. And I'm so glad that you were able to give that to your daughter.
Oh, I know. I mean, I think that my journey in leadership has made me a better parent for sure. I've just done so much of my own work to be the leader that I am today. And boy, do I not get it right. And I still, I just keep getting back up and going back in. Can we do a role play on this one? I think this you can really add some value here. So we have a senior vice president. I'm making it up. This is all hypothetical. Senior vice president in a Fortune 500 tech company. Massive pressure from shareholder, the market, internal board. They own the product, right? Got to get this going. And they're losing people left and right. And they're trying to figure out how to organize, how to restructure, how to get people to lean in more when everybody's burnt out, tired, maxed out. And one of their directors comes to them and says, I really think we need to end of life this product. Like in this product line, this one needs to go bye-bye, right? And the senior vice president's like, but that's part of our revenue stream and this matters and right? And then all of a sudden you have this like competing, and the director's like, I know my business, I know what's up, I'm giving you my input. And the senior vice president's like, has all this like input overload going on and worried about so many layers. And I know in your book, we're trying to get people on board. And so I'm just curious, like if you were the director, how might you approach that to help the senior vice president not only hear what you have to say, but actually consider that what you're presenting is actually in the best interest of the business, the customers, the department? Because this is happening. I hear these conversations.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
And when you're dealing with somebody who's under that much pressure, you do need to create space for them to think and hear what you're saying. Because look, when your amygdala is firing, you're actually not hearing.
Yeah, I don't think you can hear, right? Like, I mean, your hearing goes offline, doesn't it?
I mean, in some cases you may hear sounds, but you're not interpreting them in a way that is
really processing the words that are coming at you, right?
And you're probably not remembering what you're hearing because your mind is focused on survival, right? So giving some space for that, but also understanding some of the key motivators for that particular person. We all have different motivators, and you can read lots of different books about the things that motivate people. Like Cialdini's written quite a bit on, sales and motivators and things like that. But connecting with a motivator that really drives a person's behavior is important in your messaging. And you can do this with any message that you need to land. Sometimes you have to be a little more creative than others. But if you are trying to get through, and communicating is not just sending a message. Communication is getting through. Communication is getting through to someone, because I can talk until my face turns blue. If you don't connect with my message, you haven't heard me.
That's a quotable quote.
Yeah. I mean, how many times a day are you listening to ads in your car, or, as you're listening to, whatever streaming service you're listening to? How many of them are you remembering?
I'm flipping through them and trying not to, right? Unless my daughter's singing them.
Right?
Right.
Well, right. So you have to make your message matter in a world full of noise.
Yeah. You have to make your message matter in a world full of noise. And I will add this. One of the things I know to be true is it's not a one-time conversation. Like end of lifing a product is a strategy. There are multiple facets. You got to go look for the roadblockers, the people that are supporting you, what the person cares about, how might this all fit? Like there's a roadmap and like a process to this. And one of the
Absolutely.
things I love in your book, and I'm going to go here and highlight it for people. So on 133, you've got this personal stakeholder map, right? And I thought, ooh, that might be an interesting exercise for that senior vice president and perhaps all the other senior directors and VPs in your group. Lay that out and then help figure that out. And I was like, that's tangible. You can do that.
100%.
Yep.
And I like the stakeholder map because look, we've divided people into these general groups and we gave them, gender neutral names. And we talked about the level of influence and the level of support, right? You're going to find in your life, in your personal life, in your professional life, there are going to be people who are your cheerleaders, right? They are super supportive. You're what we call them leader leads, where they're, the team rah-rah.
Yes, I read all this. I was super excited about it. Yep.
And then you're going to find the ones that are not supportive at all and that are actively trying to derail what you're doing. They exist. And no matter who you are, you have these, personas in your life.
Yeah, when I was reading it, I was like, oh, I love how you labeled them. I was going to pull it up here. I'm looking for it real quick because I have so many markers. But one of the things you were talking about was getting really clear on what, oh, here it is. Yes. What like energy, influence, and support is there for each of them. And then you were actually in the book talking about the new language, like your launch acronym, about how to really language in a way that the person you're trying to influence receives it, going back to how noisy it is and what they're pulling through. So, I mean, there's so much in here to pull apart, and it's so good. And there's so many pro tips. Yeah, this is where we're going, right?
Yeah. The types of stakeholders really matter. And you should know where you stand, right? You should know whether you have an active supporter, whether you have a passive resistor. You should know, is this person going to make what we're trying to do more challenging? Are they going to help us get around barriers? Because whenever you have a potential roadblock, you have options to go over, under, around, find alternate solutions. But you need to know where all of these stakeholders sit, because that impacts your likelihood of success and support. And sometimes, you have to call in those reinforcements and get the, the CEO's imprimatur on something.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I
lots
used to
of
say, I need your
times,
title sometimes. Hey, I need your title. Okay.
yeah,
No problem. Right.
and sometimes you do.
Yep.
So understanding that can really help you navigate and also avoid some potential derailers along the way. But one of the things that I think is really important from that is that the people that are the most challenging in your life often have the most lessons for you and cautionary tales for you, right? So you are very likely to get much more candid and critical feedback from people who don't like you or don't like what you're doing, right?
Yeah, they're not your biggest supporters, right? Yeah, this is so good. One of the thoughts I have as we land that plane, this concept of advice or feedback. What I learned in my own career is those people that were roadblockers or not my biggest fans or critical of me, whenever I asked for feedback, it was kind of like a bloodbath of all the things I did wrong. But when I asked for advice, it actually shifted the energy in the moment and be like, hey, well, if you were me, what would you do?
That's a great question.
Game changer. What? If you were me, what would you do versus what feedback do you have on my proposal? Hell no, not doing it. Right. So yeah, I really, really love this so much. Lisa, Beth, the conversation that we've had today has spanned so much. Let me see if I might kind of put a bow on it for us. So we've talked about how your book really is a playbook way beyond, the target audience of compliance, right? This is a life playbook to not only get people aligned and on board, also to help them feel safe, how to figure out where you are in your own body and mind so that you can be your best self, and then really take your organization where you want it to go. Like, I just think raise your game, not your voice should be on everyone's nightstand. That's number one. And we've highlighted some things here, but what you've weaved into it today with your own personal examples, as well as the background that you bring, I'm so grateful for it, because I think that putting you in a box of like a compliance expert or ESG expert, I'm going to say no. I really feel like you're a leadership expert, a communications expert, influence expert, like a results expert, and really a mindfulness expert. And I think our conversation today was so fruitful with that. If you had one double dog dare for the listener to take like one small action to be able to apply something from today, is there a question, a challenge? What comes to mind to help people really raise their game and not their voice?
So I think the double dog dare, and this one might be challenging for people, is to write a thank you, a letter of gratitude to someone who has been the most challenging relationship that you've had. Write
That's
a letter
triple
of
dog dare.
true thanks
Yeah.
for something.
In integrity, right? Like it has to be an
Yes.
integrous thank you.
Thank you for giving me feedback that I found hard to swallow, because it allowed me to grow in this way. And I don't know if you knew that you had this positive impact, but I'm grateful to have had you in my life.
That is a triple dog dare. I love this. I love this.
And
yes.
I'm going to add on to this. Take some time to actually write out a thank you to someone in your life who's close to you and you have not said thank you to. It may be a parent, it may be a friend, because we don't generally tend to write those letters of gratitude to people we see relatively often.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you this, because I know we want to get to the motivator and the why. So I'm sitting here like, I'm going to be the hypothetical person. That guy's a total jackass. I don't want to say thank you. I mean, yeah, it did help, but like what's in it for the person? Like when they do that, how does that help them in their leadership, in their amygdala, in their life? Why would it be good to take on that discomfort and take on your dare?
So what's been interesting is that there have been many studies done on the power of gratitude, especially gratitude that isn't easy. The power of gratitude is it actually helps the person who is extending that gratitude even more than the recipient. The recipient's delighted. It makes their day a lot better. Mm-hmm. But for the person who takes the time and effort to do it, the benefits are actually 2 or 3-fold. So this is something that helps other people and also helps you.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, double dog, triple dog dare. Take a moment and think of someone who's either triggered you or impacted you in a way that was hard, and thank them for that specific thing. And I would add into why it mattered and what the gift was, if you can see that gift. If you're still in the middle of it, you might wait till you can see it clearly. And then the second thing was to reach out to someone who you haven't said thank you to in a while. Did I get it right?
Someone close that you haven't actually said thank you to.
I love that. Okay. So last question. Music. I know the neuroscience. I understand how music impacts our energy levels, helps us with, even bringing us back to good memories, or perhaps just helps us reflect. So as the people are taking on this dare, thinking about that tough time or who they might thank, what song might they want to play to help process this for themselves? What comes to mind for you? If you were doing this, what song would you turn on?
I'm going to say it because it just keeps coming back into my mind, which means it's meant to be said.
Okay.
And as it may be somewhat cliche, but I always think of Katy Perry's Firework.
Oh, I love that song so much.
Right. I always, yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And if you listen to the lyrics, it's really about allowing yourself to shine and allowing that inner beauty to be born into the world and to come forth. And I think that so often we're trying to conform and, keep parts of our personality from view. I think we just need to be human and all of the, fallible and wonderful ways that we are. So that would be my song.
There you go. Okay, we're playing firework. We're writing some cards, everybody. That's what we're doing. This is what's going to happen. Okay, so last question for you. I know how to find you because I found you through somebody near and dear in our lives that connected us, and I'm so grateful. But how do you want people to reach out to you? LinkedIn, your website?
LinkedIn,
Mhm.
LinkedIn or my website are always work. You can find me at lisabeth at lumen-we.com. And I love connecting with people. I post on LinkedIn regularly. So it's always great to meet new people.
That's so cool. Okay, we're going to put in the show notes. I just can't thank you enough. I'd like to present my appreciation for this conversation. Thank you for showing up with such energy and passion and authenticity and, going in an organic conversation, because that meant we trusted each other to go and do this, right? So to create that space, it's very energizing to me. And I'm really, really grateful that I was able to read this before we talked, though, so that I could really pull that through in the conversation, because I don't endorse a lot of books, but the ones I endorse, I'm a little over the top about because they're that good. And this is in that category. I highly recommend everybody get this. Raise your game, not your voice. I mean, this is so good. Lisa Beth, thank you for being here today on Ctrl Alt Delete.
Thank you for making this such a wonderful experience and for bringing your voice and this podcast to the world.
You are very welcome. Everybody make it a great day. Go listen to firework. Take a moment. Think about that person that triggered you, and there's a gift that you actually know. Go thank somebody that you love that you haven't thanked, and know that your humanness is your superpower. All right, next time on Ctrl Alt Delete with Lisa Duerre, we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Ctrl Alt Delete with Lisa Duerre. Head on over to wherever you find your other favorite podcasts and subscribe to Ctrl Alt Delete with Lisa Duerre. Leave a review with some of that 5-star love. And let's keep it real. There's a reason why you're listening to this. If you don't get the support you need and start making changes in your life and work as a leader in tech, you can expect regret and burnout in the near future. Lisa and the team at RLD Group have been in your shoes, sat in those meetings, and experienced everything you can imagine as a leader in tech. They can help you get kick-ass results at work without burning out, so you can be present for the moments that matter to you and your loved ones. Take your first step by visiting rldgroupllc.com. RLD Group helps develop technical experts lacking people leadership skills from being a company's biggest liability into their greatest asset. Find out more at rldgroupllc.com. Thanks again for listening. Catch you next time on Ctrl Alt Delete with Lisa Duerre, powered by RLD Group, as we help you reboot your leadership drive.